Good morning, you are very welcome back. Now, just ahead of this interview, we would like to warn viewers that they might find some of the content distressing as it does relate to sexual violence.
Our next guest has said that she finally feels free after her rapist was refused an appeal against his 7-year sentence. Ciara Mangan joins us now. Ciara, thank you so much for joining us. An awful lot of people would have seen you on the front of papers and everything yesterday. So can you tell us when all of this started, what age you were and what happened?
Oh, well, I was 18 when this happened, when I was raped by a work colleague of mine at a party that I was at. It was a drugged rape, and there was my drink was spiked, and I was raped. Then I was isolated and brought upstairs to a upstairs bathroom and raped on the bathroom floor as I went in and out of consciousness. Everyone then, including the perpetrator, he left me on the floor. My memory was wiped then for 7 hours around because of they suspect it was a sleeping tablet that they put in my drink. So I was left on the floor. I don't really know. My last vision was him just putting back on his belt and walking out the door. And then I don't know who kind of picked me up off the floor and whatnot, but 7 hours later, I woke up in a bed covered in my own vomit and choking on it. Yeah, so I did nearly die. They had all gone to the nightclub as well and left me in the house on my own, yeah.
You then continued, you went back to work and were taunted.
Yes, yeah. People kind of find it quite difficult to understand how and perhaps why I stayed there and why I worked there, but I didn't really have a chance to process what had happened, you know. They sang the rape songs and they sang the rape said rape jokes and made fun and light of what happened to me, and I didn't really have time to process what had happened, and I thought that it wasn't as serious as it really was.
When something happens, when something is perpetrated upon someone, especially when there are substances involved, a night out, all that kind of stuff, it can be very difficult, and there's an awful lot of shame within a person. Was that something for you that you woke up discombobulated, not knowing what's happened, and were you very inside yourself for a while?
Yeah, I mean, I did everything that you're not supposed to do. I went home and had a shower, but obviously I was going to have a shower because I was, you know,
you'd vomited
all over myself. So, you know, I was bruised and I could have gone to the SATU unit, but I didn't go, and I went into shock. I went into shock, and all I could think was, I'm working today. You got to just get back up on the horse, and that's what your mind does. It kind of masks what's really happened so that you can cope. So.
And that's it. We've got these ideas.
It's protective.
Of, well, she or he didn't act that way, therefore.
Yeah.
But you've been through it.
Yeah.
Your mind took over just to get through the day. Is that what it felt like?
Yeah. Shock protects you, and you go into shock, and it protects you, and you just get on with it.
Shane Noonan, he was found guilty of the rape, and he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. It wasn't long after that, though, he then appealed this decision. Were you aware of the appeal at the time? Did you think once that he had that sentencing initially, that was a weight off your mind in a sense?
Yeah. Well, I suppose I waived my anonymity on the steps of the CCJ, and I thought that I had got justice that day, and I thought that this was the start of, you know, the next chapter in my life. And then 2 weeks later, he appealed the sentence, and I'm thrown back into that justice process all over again. And he did plead guilty. So the fact that someone who pleads guilty can appeal his sentence after expressing remorse and getting time off for remorse, because when you express remorse and then you appeal your sentence, effectively you're revoking that.
From the day of your rape, from when it happened, when you were 18 years old, to the conviction, how long was that period?
I took some time to process the rape.
Yeah.
It took me 5 years. I went down really bad paths. I got involved in, I was self-medicating myself, as they would say, suicidal, really in a bad place. Going to the rape crisis centres in Mayo, where I'm from, and then Limerick, and trying to go to college and do the things that I'm supposed to be doing at that age. So I reported the crime 5 years after the rape itself. And then, of course, COVID hit.
Yeah.
And that put a spanner in the works in terms of going to trial. It was also adjourned twice or 3 times. My whole family had travelled up to Dublin 2 times, stayed in hotels, went to the criminal courts, prepared for a trial, and then you get there and they say, you've got to go home again.
So then that's 5 years you report it. By the time it goes through the justice system, the first conviction, how long was that period?
Was another 4 years.
Another 4 years. So we're talking 9 years out from the event.
And then the sentencing was then 10 years.
So it's 10 years since when this happened to you.
Exactly, yeah.
What's that like?
It's a long time.
It's a very, very long time, Ciara.
It's a very long time, really long time. And it's new to everyone else, you know, when you waive your anonymity. But for me, it's not new. It's been something I've been battling with for 10 years.
And when you've been living with that and battling that for 10 years, trying to escape, as you said, by self-medicating, to then think that finally we've got there, we've got the conviction, I can now move on with my life, and then this appeal starts. You would think an appeal on what was a guilty plea should be fairly swift. How long did that take?
It was 22 months until the appeal was heard on Monday, just gone. And that process could have been done in 6 weeks because there was no new legal arguments being brought to the table at all. There was no evidence. So he just brought an appeal because he said that his sentence was too severe, particularly the suspended part of his sentence. He wasn't happy with that. He felt that he could have got more suspended. And his barrister stood up in court and said that effectively a suspended sentence is the same as a custodial sentence. And it's not.
Why 22 months?
God only knows. I think it fell through the many cracks in the justice system. And I will be seeking an answer to it, because 22 months of holding a victim in anxiety and psychological stress, there's no consideration for the victim, you know?
Yeah.
In these cases, we're the core of it, you know? We have to be, this impacts us, and we have to be in the process.
Yeah. We've seen in so many cases, we know there's underreporting of rape by both men and women in this country. It goes unreported. We've got guards trying to go through training to try to deal with this an awful lot better. But we know that victims inside in court, it can feel like they're being salted all over again. What were you wearing? What were you doing? What had you imbibed? So from that point of view, and you've gone without your anonymity. You gave up that right to your anonymity so that you could talk about this. What is the reaction when a young woman like yourself gives up anonymity in a case like this?
Well, it's a very, very difficult decision to make. It's a very personal decision to make, and not everyone wants to do that for many reasons. It could be that the perpetrator is a family member, for example. You know, that's another dynamic that makes it quite difficult. And, you know, when you do that, your face is out there. You know, you'll never be able to lie about your age. You know, things like that, it's just really hard. And it's not for everybody. But for me, and I think for a lot of other survivors, it has a lot to do with transferring that shame back. And when you get rid of that shame, I can't explain the lift that it gives you.
We've seen a lot with Giselle Pellicot in France talk about it's not my shame, it's your shame. You have done this.
Must change sides.
Must change, the shame must change sides. I'm sure that resonated with you so much.
Yeah, so I actually I wrote my own opinion piece in the Irish Examiner recently about perhaps having a public register for sex offenders, because effectively as it stands today, the sex offenders register doesn't mean very much for perpetrators. But I don't think that's gonna work. But I think the burden is going to remain with the survivors to waive their anonymity, to name these perpetrators. Unfortunately, that's just the way it's going to be.
Listen, you said outside court that the healing has been on hold, but this now will mean that you are able to move on and try to get on with your life, which is just fantastic. You've set up your charity as well, Beyond Surviving.
Yes.
What are you hoping to achieve through that?
Beyond Surviving is the next step for survivors. So I would have progressed through the in-crisis period, and I found myself feeling a little bit in limbo, where I wanted to meet other survivors. I wanted to have support to reclaim my life, and healing support, and also advocate for myself. And Beyond Surviving brings survivors together, and we can heal in solidarity.
Amazing.
It's incredible. Thank you so much for taking the time. You have done so much, putting yourself out there. I can't even imagine it. Like, in a day and age like today, where not only everyone has an opinion, social media, the world has an opinion, and I can only imagine how hard that is. Ciara Mangan, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ciara. Thanks so much.
And if anything that has been discussed in this conversation has affected you, please visit virginmediatelevision.ie/helplines for support. And also Beyond Surviving is there now, along with all rape crisis centres.